Well everyone, the Nothing Phone 2 has just came out, so let's go and take a look at it and compare it against the Nothing Phone 1 and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off between both of these devices, they were very interesting phones. The Nothing Phone 1 I think was more of a interesting device that Nothing Phone Company had made, and I think with the Nothing Phone 2 it's a good successor. It's a good step in the right direction. I do think that hopefully they're not going to go down the OnePlus route, but I think between these two phones, they still have a lot of stuff going for them. Now with the Nothing Phone 1, on the front, you were getting a 6.55-inch OLED display. It's 1080p, and it's a pretty good looking panel. There's not really too much to hate on it. It's a flat display, which some people may prefer, and it's actually a hole punch display with the hole punch in the top left. And no matter what I've really done with this specific device, it's looked and felt pretty good. I think it performs very well. I think it has a lot of stuff going for it within the display. And it's also 120Hz panel. So things look smooth when you brush around them. And overall, I don't really have too much to complain about it from that perspective. Now with the Nothing Phone 2, you're getting a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED display. It's 1080p and it's also 120Hz. This specific device's hole punch is actually in the center though. So that's something that's actually really interesting that they changed that within these two panels. But I will still say that within the Nothing Phone 2, it still looks very good. It's a very good looking panel. A little bit of bezel around both these devices though, compared to maybe like a Galaxy S23 or one of those devices, but it's almost in line with something like the Pixel 7, so there's not really anything changed there. But I will say with the Nothing Phone 2 and Nothing Phone 1, very similar stylings, at least on the fronts and even the sides of these phones. Like they're both flat sides, USB-C ports at the bottom. So there's not really a lot to complain about there either, because they both have a lot of similarity there, which is really interesting. Now on the back, they both have glass backs, which again is really nice. They're not like the best feeling glass backs though. Like I feel like both of them could have been improved a little bit. I feel like when I hold something like even like a Galaxy S20, I can tell that's a glass back. This thing feels more like a plastic back, or maybe like a plastic back that the Pixel 6a and 7a have. Not really too sure what's going on there, but hopefully these ones get a little bit stronger and feel a little bit better. On top of that, they do have that little glyph interface on the back, so they both share that similarity. I think it's designed a little bit differently on both, or maybe it's not, I can't even tell, but they both have it, which is really nice. So whenever you get notifications or getting phone calls or anything, you can kind of have like a personalized light show on the back of these phones. I think it's a novelty, but I think it's cool, and if it doesn't increase the price of these phones like crazy, then I'm totally fine with it. Now both these phones have IP certification, which is really cool. They both have wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, which is a really awesome feature to have. And they both actually do come in pretty, big sized phones. I mean, the Nothing Phone 2 is bigger than the Nothing Phone 1, which is interesting, but that's something that I do like. So beyond both, these are very large phones, and I'm really happy that, Nothing is still making these devices, because they were actually pretty solid devices when they first came out. So in terms of that, and in terms of the outside, that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the cameras, they both have dual camera setups on the back. So this isn't anything crazy. This is already stuff we've seen before. So with the Nothing Phone 1, you're basically getting that, 50 megapixel wide and 50 megapixel ultra wide, and you're basically getting the exact same camera on the Nothing Phone 2. However, there is a slight difference. With the Nothing Phone 2, you could only film in 4K at 30 on the back, which I did kind of feel like was a little weird. I feel like at that time in 2022, so many phones were filming 4K at 60, especially for this phone. Like it wasn't a cheap phone by any means, but the Nothing Phone 2 now has the ability of filming in 4K at 60. So that is something that is really cool. We now have that type of capability on that device, whereas on before, we didn't really have that type of capability. So again, that's kind of one big thing to keep in mind. The megapixel count on the front cameras have also gone up twice as much. So we went from 16 to 32 megapixels. I'm not even really too sure why that ended up happening, but still the cool thing that ended up changing. And I think something like that, again, is a really cool thing that we have the capability of doing here as well. So I would definitely say the camera quality has improved a bit, and you're definitely getting an overall better camera on something like the Nothing Phone 2 than on the Nothing Phone 1. On top of that, in terms of software support, both these phones are going to be supported with software for a long period of time. So realistically speaking, neither one of these phones are going to be outdated anytime soon. So that's something that's really cool. You're going to be getting a long software supported phone between both of these, and that's something that I really do like. So if you were trying to go ahead and get a phone that's going to be supported with software for probably a few years from now, both these phones are probably going to be there. You're going to be getting Android 14, Android 13 already on both. You're going to be getting Android 15 probably on both, and then so on and so forth until the Nothing Phone 2 outlasts the Nothing Phone 1, which is probably what's going to end up happening. you're going to be getting a longer lasting phone overall on the Nothing Phone 2 than on the Nothing Phone 1, which is pretty much what's going to be end up happening. So that kind of covers it up there as well. On top of that, in terms of performance, this is probably one of the biggest differences between both these devices. So before, on the Nothing Phone 1, we had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 778G Plus chipset inside with 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, but it did go up to 12 gigs of RAM, where the Nothing Phone 2 had that Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset inside with 8 gigs of RAM, but it does go up to 12 gigs of RAM, if you want it. Now, this is a pretty big interesting change because the chipset that was inside of the Nothing Phone 1, honestly, it was kind of like a budgeter chipset. Like, it wasn't like the lowest chipset of all time, but definitely was more of a budget chipset than not. With the Nothing Phone 2, this is actually one of the strongest chipsets of last year. So it's interesting that they actually chose this direction because that is a very, very good chipset that was inside of phones like the, Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, that was inside of phones like, so many other phones. This is a better chipset than what the Galaxy S22 had last year. So I think this is a very good approach. Games and everything are going to run perfectly fine on something like the Nothing Phone 2. The Nothing Phone 1, everything's still going to be working fine too, but you're definitely getting a beefier and just heavier performance chipset on the Nothing Phone 2 than on the Nothing Phone 1. And that is something that I actually really, really like about the Nothing Phone 2. And I think that in and of itself is an awesome thing going on for that device. So personally, when I have something like the Nothing Phone 2, you're going to be getting a device that is going to be, very, very strong from that perspective. The Nothing Phone 1 is still going to be good probably for a majority of people, but definitely for a fact the Nothing Phone 2 is going to definitely be in a much better situation for sure. Now, ending it off with the battery life, both these phones have very, very large size batteries. The Nothing Phone 1 has a 4500 mAh battery, where the Nothing Phone 2 has a 4700 mAh battery. Now, again, you're probably going to be getting a better battery performant device from the bigger one, which is the Nothing Phone 2, but I will say the Nothing Phone 1's chipset inside was actually fairly underpowered, so you might actually be able to get decent battery life from something like the Nothing Phone 1 than on the Nothing Phone 2. But I would still say beyond that, both these devices are killing it, and they're getting very solid battery lives from, between both, just from that perspective alone. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll definitely tell you is I definitely do like how both these devices, perform, and I like how both these devices basically are at the end of the day. But I will still say between the Nothing Phone 1 and the Nothing Phone 2, I don't really know if there's one device that I would look at and be like, oh my goodness, this is the best phone ever. But there's definitely a better phone here, and that's the Nothing Phone 2. I really do think this is a really good upgrade coming from the Nothing Phone 1. I don't know if I'd go from the Nothing Phone 1 to the Phone 2, but I definitely would say if you're coming from neither one of these phones and you're wanting one of them, the Phone 2 is a pretty big upgrade. It's, a pretty decent one at that. But if you're still in the market and you want to get a good price on an older phone, maybe you can go for the Phone 1, but I don't even think those things are really worth buying anymore. The fact that the Phone 2 is probably a way better first generation device than probably the Phone 1 was, in my opinion. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.